Tonight, Donald Trump's a big day in court. The former president and GOP presidential frontrunner heads to a New York courthouse as high-stakes hearings in Georgia begin under a cloud of controversy.
And celebration turns to terror.
Everybody started running. There was screaming. We didn't know what was happening.
The aftermath of the deadly shooting at a Super Bowl parade in Kansas City. Plus, Russian space threat? The U.S. assessment of a Russian plan to position a nuclear weapon in space.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Former President Donald Trump's day of dueling court cases. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. The first ever criminal trial of a former U.S. president is one step closer to proceeding. Today, a New York judge denied Donald Trump's request to dismiss criminal charges stemming from hush money paid to an adult film star.
The judge set jury selection in a Manhattan courtroom for next month. CBN's Hillary Powell has been following the developments. Hillary, this, to be clear, is just one of multiple criminal cases against Trump seeing movement this week.
That's right, John. Tracking two Trump cases today. The New York case one you mentioned, another in Georgia where all eyes were actually on Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, who testified about her romantic relationship with a special prosecutor she hired to lead the 2020 election interference case against Donald Trump. Now, Willis selected a man she admits she had a relationship with to prosecute Trump in that case. If the judge says Willis is disqualified, that could delay this Georgia case, and there are many legal issues in front of the president right now, but we at least got to hear from him in this New York case.
I'm going to have to sit here for months on a trial. I think it's ridiculous. It's unfair.
Former President Donald Trump addressed cameras after a judge ruled his first criminal trial is set to start March 25th. Trump pleaded not guilty to nearly 36 counts of falsifying business records and accusations he tried to hide a relationship with Stormy Daniels and his attempt to buy her silence. He wanted the case dismissed, arguing it's politically motivated.
They want to rush it because they want to get it desperately before the election.
No cameras were in that courtroom, but a separate case in Atlanta is playing out publicly, where a Fulton County judge overseeing Trump's Georgia election interference case required a special hearing on misconduct allegations leveled against Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis and prosecutor Nathan Wade.
Let's start back in 2019.
Yep.
So you and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct. And I think in one of your motions you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive.
I think it's possible that the facts alleged by the defendant could result in disqualification. I think an evidentiary hearing must occur.
Willis admits to a personal relationship with Wade, but denied any financial conflict of interest that would disqualify her from the case. In tense testimony, Trump's lawyer questioned Wade for 2 hours.
When did your romantic relationship with Ms. Willis begin?
2022.
When in 2022?
Early 2022.
So you were appointed in November of 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
A former friend and co-worker of Willis also testified she witnessed Willis's personal relationship with Wade before he was hired in Trump's Georgia election interference case.
And did you observe them do things that are common among people having a romantic relationship?
Yes.
Such as, can you give us an example?
Hugging, kissing, just affection.
Trump and several co-defendants accused Willis of benefiting financially from the relationship. The former president acknowledges his court proceedings complicate the election.
How do you plan on campaigning while you're in court?
We want delays. Obviously, I'm running for election. How can you run for election and be sitting in a courthouse in Manhattan all day long?
Now back to the Georgia case. Trump and 18 others pleaded not guilty to all charges for alleged efforts to overturn results, again, of the 2020 presidential election there in the Peach State. You guys.
All right, CBN Washington correspondent Hillary Powell. Thank you, Hillary. Well, joining us now is David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst. David, always great to have you. So the New York hush money case is going to trial. It proceeds with a March trial date. We have yet to know the fate of the misconduct hearing concerning these two key players involved in the Fulton County racketeering case. We just heard some fireworks in that courtroom case. David, what are we to make of today's split-screen hearings?
Well, the Georgia case is a little bit more dicey as it relates to whether or not it'll even go forward. And if it does, it may be delayed significantly. So it's the New York case that everybody should probably keep their eye on for now. That Georgia case has a lot of problems. Just ask Fani Willis for sure. But look, John, ultimately, this is all about Trump's opponents, folks that want to see him behind bars. They want a conviction before the November election. Legal scholars that I shouldn't call them scholars, but legal analysts that I talk to believe that will not happen, that it will be slow walked, even the one in New York. Now, having said that, let's remember, just because he's convicted doesn't mean it wouldn't go up the appeal process, which it would. And so the appeals might not be over before November.
Yeah. David, you know, these are just two of several cases against former President Trump. Meanwhile, last week, the special counsel, Robert Hur, opted not to charge President Biden for mishandling classified documents. He, like Vice President Pence, were quick to comply and return the documents in question. I understand that Trump, there's also questions of obstruction in his case. But are the accusations of a dual system of justice fair, David?
Well, I think so. And quite frankly, many voters feel that way as well, especially Republican voters. They think there is a two-tiered system of justice. And let's remember, Jenna, not to get into the weeds here, but Donald Trump believes he had a right to hold on to those records. And as for Biden, we'll leave Pence out of it for a moment. But remember, Robert Hur found out that Biden willfully had those documents. I mean, he had them for years and years. And it was only until someone finally alerted, supposedly, the White House that he needed to give them back. But he told his ghostwriter they had classified documents. So, look, I think people understand that there's a two-tiered system of justice going on, and that's a benefit to Donald Trump.
David, we just have a few seconds left, but I want to get in a question about the shakeup at the RNC that's raising some questions. You had one senior Trump advisor describe the pending moves as making two entities, the Trump campaign and the RNC, quote, a distinction without a difference. Is this an attempt to take over the party and convention, as Nikki Haley claims, or is it about money? Trump has long wanted the RNC to pay for his legal fees. What do you make of this?
Real quick, money could be a factor here for sure. I think the broader implications here is just too close for comfort. I mean, just think of it the other way, right? I mean, what if Biden was putting, his brother-in-law or something along those lines, or, in this case, Laura Trump would be the sister-in-law. What if he was putting his brother-in-law in charge of the DNC? Republicans would be outraged. And so I think there's a lot of PR fallout from this. Not the best PR move for sure.
Okay, David, we'll leave it there. Great to have you on this big news day and get your analysis. Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, guys.
Well, to Kansas City, and new details tonight about the shooting at yesterday's Super Bowl parade. Police say the shooting appears to have stemmed from a dispute among several people.
Yeah, one person is dead and more than 20 others have been injured in what was supposed to be a day of celebration. CBN's Wendy Griffith reports.
Nearly 1 million people had gathered to celebrate the Kansas City Chiefs at a coming home victory rally at Union Station. And then shots fired. The gunfire began just as the Super Bowl champs were leaving the stage. The crowd stunned, then trying to escape as people began to run.
All of a sudden, people started crushing forward. Everybody started running. There was screaming. We didn't know what was happening, but this day and age, when people run, you run.
Officers with guns drawn running through the crowd. This video appears to show Chiefs fans chasing a suspect and taking him down. Another video showing law enforcement tackling another person to the ground. One person, Lisa Lopez Galvin, a mother of two, a beloved local disc jockey, and diehard Chiefs fan, died during surgery after being shot. Multiple others injured. First responders treated victims on the ground, ferrying patients on stretchers to waiting ambulances. Back at the scene, snipers scanning the crowd from rooftops.
We heard gunshots, but we thought they were fireworks, so half of us didn't really respond to it.
I'm angry at what happened today. The people who came to this celebration
should expect a safe environment. We had over 800 law enforcement officers, Kansas City and other agencies, at the location to keep everyone safe. Because of bad actors, which were very few, this tragedy occurred.
Quarterback Patrick Mahomes posting on social media that he's praying for Kansas City. And tight end Travis Kelce saying he's heartbroken. The children injured in this mass shooting are expected to be okay, but officials say multiple adults are also suffering from injuries. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Wendy. And turning now to an emerging threat from Russia. The White House confirming today that Russia has obtained an anti-satellite weapon. U.S. intelligence officials do not believe the weapon is currently operational.
There's still a capability they're developing. We are still analyzing the information that's available to that. I would not speak definitively about our strategic deterrent capabilities. I want to reiterate, it is not an active capability, and it has not yet been deployed.
Moscow's ambitions to target not Earth, but critical satellites circling around it are a blatant violation of international treaties. Russia's plans came out after the Republican head of the House Intelligence Committee urged the White House to declassify intel described as a serious national security threat. John Hardy is the Russia Program Deputy Director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he joins us now for more. John, great to have you with us this evening. So is the U.S. prepared to counter a threat like this coming from Russia?
Thanks for having me on. I think first we need a better understanding of what exactly the capability is. I trust the intelligence community has more information on that than we do, but at least to me it's still unclear whether this is in fact a nuclear weapon in space, meaning something that's meant to destroy satellites through a nuclear blast and the radiation that comes with it, or if it's a nuclear-powered space-based jammer, meaning it uses the nuclear reactor to power another device, in this case, an electronic warfare capability to interfere with satellites. So we need to kind of have that basic question solved. I think broadly this speaks to Russia's determination to be able to hold U.S. And Western satellites at risk. The Russians have long seen that space is really vital to U.S. military operations, and so they want to be able to take that away from us.
So you make that distinction. I'm wondering, though, whether it's one or the other, how will it affect the U.S. homeland if you have a satellite-destroying weapon or the capability of that, like the one Russia may be developing or has been in development, if it were deployed?
Right. So the exact threat would depend on where in which orbit it's meant to kind of reside in and which type of satellites it's meant to target. But broadly, I'd say that the satellites, our military satellites, and especially those for nuclear command and control, are hardened to resist, say, the radiation from a nuclear blast. So that's good. On the other hand, things like these recent advent of private sector satellites, where you have many thousands of satellites kind of in a proliferated network, those are less so. So that could be the target for Russia. They've actually been developing a space-based nuclear-powered jammer. At least we think it's a jammer for quite some time. It's possible that maybe in the last couple of years they've invested more in that capability, seeing it as useful for precisely getting at that sort of SpaceX-type private sector challenge.
All right. John Hardy with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Great to have you on this evening with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. The key to the White House in 2024 could be young voters. Coming up, see where they stand.
Well, the likely candidates for the 2024 presidential election are either already octogenarians or about to be.
That's crazy. So how do candidates hovering around 80 connect with younger voters? That's what they're trying to figure out. And you know who else is trying to figure it out? CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka. Matt, I know you recently traveled to one of the country's oldest college political conventions to find out more. What did you learn?
Well, first off, if I knew the answer, the campaigns would probably hire me, right? But we're not quite at that point. In 2020, exit polling had Joe Biden dominating the youth vote over former President Donald Trump. 4 years later, poll numbers for young voters show a lack of enthusiasm as we head into this presidential election.
Are you kidding? Biden.
The president is on TikTok, the controversial app dominated by Gen Z. It's the latest attempt to court young voters in a consequential election year.
The 2024 MockCon convention will now come to order.
For 116 years, the students at Washington and Lee University in Virginia have been putting on MockCon. The student-run mock convention sets out to mimic the real thing for whichever party is out of power. To put it bluntly, they are the very votes politicians are so desperately trying to tap into. MockCon has accurately predicted party nominees over 70% of the time, and the age group has the opportunity to help decide the next commander-in-chief. For junior Tommy Holstead, the choice is clear.
And that is Donald Trump, and he definitely has my support, and he should have the entire country's.
Holstead says there's no secret issue out there to win him over. For the Texas-born student, it's the border.
And it's a policy that actually directly impacts me and my state and everything that I guess goes along with that. And I think that his strong stance on the border is really what sets him apart from like a lot of the other candidates that are in the race.
Henry Hayden runs the university's College Republicans chapter. He says younger voters value having their voices heard.
Free speech, I think that's a very important thing. As some of the speakers highlighted, cancel culture. Really, I think our generation is not too enthusiastic about that.
And for some young Democrats at MockCon, there was a strong desire to end the divisiveness they see in Trump's MAGA movement.
The polarization in the government, I feel like it's extremely harmful to our government, and I feel like Republican and Democrat shouldn't be as, at odds as they are right now.
A mock convention of the Republican Party has nominated Donald John Trump.
Now it's up to the candidates to figure out if they can get the future of the country on their side. And another potential warning sign for the candidates. There was historic turnout for the youth vote in 2020, but a Harvard poll released just before the new year shows that the number of young Americans who, quote, definitely plan on voting this year is down by almost 10%. John, Jenna.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Well, angst, division, and fear-mongering in politics. Up next, a Christian guide for political engagement helps voters take a step back.
Welcome back. Anxiety, division, and fear. For many voters, that characterizes the 2024 presidential election in a nutshell. But in the middle of the polarizing vitriol, a new guide to political engagement is helping one group navigate this election season: Christians. The guide, called The Nations Belong to God, is patterned off the ancient model of catechism, a starting point for Christians thinking about how to engage in politics.
And here now to help bring us to that starting point is Brent Leatherwood, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Brent, welcome. So this is a guide for, quote, how life should be lived every other day besides a Tuesday in November every 4 years. What do you mean by that in terms of our Christian and political life?
If we pull ourselves away from solely focusing on Election Day, you'll find that you engage in politics when you have a conversation with your next door neighbor, or you're at the office and talking with fellow coworkers, or going to the voting booth on Election Day. And in all of those instances, we should be ambassadors for the gospel. And that's what you'll find in the pages of this resource.
Brent, I want to ask you how your guide is different from other voting guides that show how certain candidates land on certain issues. What makes yours different?
We want to provide a biblical framework so that as you're looking at different candidates, whether you're in a city in California that has two Democrats running, or you're thinking about president, where, this year we're going to have a Republican nominee, Democratic nominee, independents will be on the ballot. We want Christians, as they're engaging whatever election, to have a framework to make sure that they're checking through various things to arrive at a conclusion.
Yeah, Brent, we've seen two major mass shootings just since Sunday, one at a house of worship at Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston, and another at the Super Bowl parade in Kansas City. We're, of course, coming up on the first anniversary of the Nashville mass shooting at a Christian school. How should Christians, Brent, engage politically on the issue of guns?
The state has a duty to safeguard life. And in so many of these instances, we are learning that deeply disturbed individuals in deep mental pain and anguish, are the ones that are taking lives in these mass shooting instances. And so I would say, if we're going to be consistent in our pro-life ethic, let's speak out for reforms that encourages the state to intervene where these individuals are sending out signals that they're either going to harm themselves or take innocent life. And I think that's an appropriate action by the state. And that can be done so in a way that respects our Second Amendment rights and our cherished rights that we have as Americans. But we need to speak up for life. And we do it so well in other areas, like fighting against abortion. We certainly need to do so here because, as we've just seen in recent days, so many innocent, vulnerable lives have been taken, and more needs to be done.
Yeah. All right, Brent Leatherwood, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Brent, thank you so much for coming on. Great to see you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jenna.
Coming up, the Big Apple covered in a blanket of snow. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a powerful winter storm blanketed parts of eastern Pennsylvania to Massachusetts in heavy snow.
That's right. New York City public schools were operating remotely on Tuesday, but that didn't keep folks from soaking up the snow day. In New York City, the nor'easter dumped more than 3 inches of snow on Central Park. Residents and tourists were spotted playing in Central Park's Great Lawn, celebrating the first major snowfall for the city in 2 years. And I heard actually that the system for the public school kids in New York City crashed, so maybe they did get a snow day after all.
Well, I think that's great. Like when I was a kid, I always looked forward to snow days.
Yeah.
And if it was remote learning, which we didn't have back then.
Can you imagine?
And the system crashed?
Yeah, how disappointing that would be.
Right.
All right, have a great night.
Yeah, bummer.